Hello, and welcome back to the 6-5 Summit. I'm Shelley Kramer, one of the founding partners of Futurum Research, and on behalf of my team at Futurum and the team at More Insights and Strategy, welcome. We're glad to have you. In this spotlight session, I sit down with Nikhil Krishnan, the Group Vice President of Products for C3 AI, to discuss the tremendous value that technologies like AI and machine learning can bring and are bringing to the enterprise. This is the future, and what Nikhil and his team are working on is fascinating. So without further ado, let's go check out the conversation. Hello, this is Shelley Kramer with Futurum Research, and welcome to another session of the 6-5 Summit. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Nikhil Krishnan, who's a Group Vice President of Products at C3 AI, an enterprise AI platform, an application software company headquartered in Silicon Valley. Nikhil is a former McKinsey consultant. He's a professor at Columbia University. And at C3 AI, he works with leading organizations globally to help them solve a broad array of business problems using AI and ML. In short, the things that he's interested in are right up my alley. So Nikhil, I'm so glad to have you on the series. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
I will tell you that in advance of our conversation, I just, I know that you're an author. And so I just stalked your book. And so Nikhil is the author of a book called Enterprise Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning for Managers. And so AI has been getting a lot of hype the last decade or so. And it's certainly something that we're interested around here. And so I want to talk a little bit about this today. And, I want to talk a little bit about your book, and I want to talk a little bit about, enterprise AI and what's happening there. So talk with us a little bit about what's happening in the space with AI and ML.
Super. AI and ML, people have probably heard about it in the context of Google, for example, recommending search results to you, or Facebook recommending friends and news articles to you. But in the world of the enterprise, in the world of businesses, it's much newer, and it's changing everything. It's changing all aspects of how enterprises operate, from how they service their customers, how they manage customer relationships, reduce churn, increase cross-sell, upsell, improve opportunity management, to how supply chains are run, to how manufacturing processes operate, and to the core aspects of how businesses create value in society. Every aspect of a business is transformed using algorithms, and I think that's the exciting promise of this next industrial revolution that we're living through right now.
Absolutely. One of the things that I thought was interesting as I was checking out your book was that you say that, while some enterprises are using and are taking advantage of AI and ML, really only about 13% are doing so. So we have a lot of room for growth there.
That is true. I mean, I think we're just at the start of maybe a 50-year transformation, whereby we will see the companies across the world, from large to medium to small enterprises, all use algorithms to create trillions of dollars in economic value, and transform their operations, and become smarter, become more resilient, become more capable, and be able to compete with many of the digital native players that have come out of Silicon Valley.
Right, absolutely. And I think that when it comes to AI and machine learning, what we don't think about are these things that make our experiences so easy. You mentioned Netflix or Google or Amazon Prime or Amazon in general. There's so many platforms that are using AI and ML that we don't even know about, but every part of what they're doing is making our user experiences better, more seamless, more personalized, more unique. And so when you take that beyond just the consumer use case and you take it into the enterprise and you see how you can really significantly impact outcomes and really also impact the bottom line, I think that's a really big deal. And, the beginning of a 50-year process. That's crazy. I mean, that's so exciting to be an organization that's thinking about using this now and the advantage that that will give in the future. I think that's really exciting.
No, I think it's super cool. I think we're actually just scratching the surface in terms of what these algorithms can do, and the science of AI and ML is actually fairly nascent. So when we think about what we're doing today, I think it's just the start of what's possible, and which is why I use such a long time frame, because I truly do think that the opportunity pool is going to be enormous, and we're going to learn a lot, even in the next few years in terms of what the opportunity is and how we can approach it.
Absolutely. So, what I'd like to do here is just I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the use cases of this technology where you're seeing the most success.
Sure.
For example, something that has been a huge deal as we've weathered a global pandemic, supply chain.
Mhm.
Can you talk with me a little bit about the use case as it relates to supply chain?
Sure. I mean, there are many aspects around supply chain. So, for example, one of the challenges that companies often struggle with is full visibility into the supply chain, into their supply chains,
Right.
as well as ramifications, the what ifs of when things go wrong, when a supplier is delayed, or when a supplier doesn't ship on time. And we saw many of these incidents occur amongst at our customers and at many of the prospects that we talk to because of COVID. So supply chains were disrupted, factories couldn't receive materials, shipments out of China were some of the first that were impacted by COVID. And that was together with a tremendous spike in demand that was seen by many industries, especially related to healthcare or health technology. And those two forces around COVID created tremendous stress on many organizations around the world in terms of managing their supply chain. Well, with AI systems and with the benefit of machine learning systems, organizations can actually operate, almost in real time and adapt to these impacts in real time, and also often be better prepared for managing against these high consequence, low probability events. And for example, we're able to help our customers manage every individual SKU that they buy or that they manufacture or that they distribute. Um, Often, every shift, or even within a shift, every hour by hour at every facility across the day, across the world, and do that with full stochastic optimization, AI-based forecasting techniques, and AI-based optimization techniques, so that those businesses can be more resilient. They can save inventory costs. They can operate a better supply base and deliver more robustly and more quickly to their customers. And I think all of these transformations of the supply chain are actually powered by algorithms at the core. And imagine a situation where every single material that's purchased that has quality issues or that is delayed, you have an algorithm that actually learns from that.
Right.
The algorithm learns that a certain supplier is going through a tough time, or a certain supplier might be facing challenges because of a specific holiday, or a certain shipment route might be facing might be challenged because of a strike, or because for example, the things that we saw in the Suez Canal with that ship being stranded there. Imagine algorithms picking up, parsing news, parsing articles, looking at recent trends and being able to adapt on the fly. I think that's the benefit. That's the promise of the next generation supply chain, is you don't necessarily need a human analyst to spend hours or days poring over data to try to figure out the best possible recommendation. You can have the algorithm recommend something to an analyst, and a human decision maker can shorten that time frame from days often to minutes to make a faster decision.
Right. Well, I think that's tremendously exciting. And so, I honed in there on supply chain, but I know there are so many other use cases where you're seeing success. Some of those things are, in factories as it relates to predictive maintenance and reliability. And I know that you do work in the financial services industry. And so, talk with us a little bit about, if you would, about just some quick use cases in those areas.
I mean, there are many. So, for
Yeah.
example, in factories, it's use cases such as production schedule optimization, so figuring out what to make next, on what line or on what machine. Often, many of our customers have manufacturing processes where they can produce hundreds or thousands of different types of different grades of products, and the decision of what to make is actually quite a complicated one. And many variables go into it. Other use cases include reliability in the manufacturing context, warranty and claims in the manufacturing context. Um, in financial services, it's use cases such as treasuries, cash management, customer churn, um, uh, expediting the credit approval process, transforming the way that securities are lended and borrowed, and anti-money laundering, financial crimes. There are a whole host of use cases in any one of these industries that have a transformative power.
Well, and to me, the interesting thing is that these are, one of the I think very important lessons that we learned during a global pandemic is the importance of resiliency, right? And building resiliency into our business operations and understanding the importance of being able to take quick pivots and that sort of thing. But to plan around business resiliency and continuity in times of stressors that we don't anticipate, right? So we've learned valuable lessons as a result of that. But what excites me the most about what it is you're doing here with AI and ML is that it has a significant, this is not nice to have technology. This is technology that, as you said, learns over time, keeps getting better. It's not just a, solution that does the same thing time after time, but keeps getting better. The more information it has, the better it can get. But the financial impact of this is significant.
No, that's absolutely correct. And our CEO Tom Siebel actually has a pretty compelling, I think, point of view on this, where he frames AI and ML as an existential threat, as well as an opportunity for enterprises. And I think enterprises that embrace AI, embrace machine learning, embrace algorithms as a core part of their operating system, are going to survive and thrive. And those that don't, those that look towards the last generation of technology, are going to have a very difficult time competing over the next 50 years.
Absolutely. 100% in agreement with Tom there. But Tom has a pretty solid track record of making good decisions along the way. So
Absolutely.
absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about, a lot of times when it comes to the digital transformation journey that enterprises go on, a lot of times we see a technology decision, a technology purchase that may or may not work out the way that we hope it will. So, talk to us a little bit, if you would, about what are the best practices that lead to success when you decide to embrace the algorithm and integrating AI and ML into your enterprise. Talk to us about again, how do we get great success when it comes to that? What are the things we need to think about?
Yeah, no, a great question, and there's actually quite a lot to unpack there, and this is a big part of what I write about in the book. Um, so there are many factors to consider in terms of best practices, both in developing algorithms and developing applications, as well as operating AI-based applications at scale. And over the last decade, we've really seen and learned many of these lessons the hard way, and working with our customers and our partners. But some of the top things include the fact that you cannot just relegate AI ML to a data science team in an organization. It has to be fundamental to the fabric of what of business processes and what that organization is hoping to accomplish. So a lot of it comes down to people, and at the end of the day, I think you want strong executive sponsorship of any AI ML effort. You want cross-functional teams of data scientists working with product managers, working with business owners, business executives, leaders, to really put a transformative effort into place. It's more than the algorithm. It's actually, the software, the algorithms, the applications, and the business processes, and most importantly, the change management and the incentive structures around a new way of operating that have to be thought through. And it's avoiding many of the pitfalls. So avoiding pitfalls, for example, inertia, or lack of cooperation between siloed units. or issues such as fairness, bias, transparency, that all have to be addressed in order for AI ML efforts to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, we talk a lot around here when we talk about digital transformation is that it's really a people initiative. It's not a technology initiative. And, it's success is predicated on creating a culture of change, a culture embracing innovation. And, it sounds like this is part of that same equation. It's really not just something that IT is running off and doing on their
Yes,
own. It's a we talk about this at the business strategy table at the
absolutely.
highest level when we're talking about what's next for our company and the technology that's going to get us there. And so I think that it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I think it's very unfair to place the burden of AI ML and, or I should say, the business capture of business value from AI ML to the CIO or to the data science organization, because really it takes the full company to coalesce around these initiatives. And I think it's really a top management effort where you do collaboration across business functions.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, it's a top management effort and it's really all about communicating that from an executive level. Here's what we're doing. Here's some of the technology we're using. Here's why. Here's what we expect to happen as a result of that. Here's why this is not a, nice to have. This is an important, a foundational business thing. And so I think when you explain it in that way, that's really when, people adopt and people are all in and excited about what's next when it comes to solutions like this.
Absolutely, and one of the things that we often advocate for, and I talk about it in the book, is a focus on value. And at the end of the day, if we're focused on value captured or value at stake from the AIML applications or initiatives, I think it serves as a good north star
Yeah.
to ensuring that things are going on track. So sizing the value up front, keeping the value in mind, and then making sure you actually capture the value, and then using significant, value capture opportunities and results to then bootstrap a transformation is probably the best way that I've seen organizations go about this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there are some areas perhaps where AI and ML don't work particularly well. What might those be?
There are probably many where they don't necessarily work quite well. There's a few examples, right? One is a more broad framing, which is not all problems require AIML to solve them. So there are many
Yeah.
problems where physics works just fine. There are many problems where business rules work just fine, or traditional optimization techniques might work just fine and get you to a good solution, an optimal solution. And there's no need to overcomplicate things. And so we always, when we advise our customers, when we work with our customers, we often advocate, we're an equal opportunity company in the sense of we don't have any bias towards any algorithm, technique, or approach, but we advocate very strongly for whatever solves the problem and unlocks the value. Whatever is the fastest route, the most reliable route to doing that is the right solution. And so I don't believe in force fitting AI ML where it might not make sense. And then a second, more I would say more tactical consideration often in the application of AI/ML is the availability of data. Often, so at its fundamental root, AI/ML techniques involve algorithms learning from data. And if you
Right.
don't have data, it's often very hard to apply these techniques, or it often is meaningless to apply these techniques because they require large data sets often to train on. Um, or to test on. And so that's a good filter for whether these techniques are often applicable is the size of the data set. Now, not all techniques fall into that, operate the same way. But in general, a good rule of thumb is, you know, is there a simpler approach? If so, use it. And a second rule of thumb is, do you have enough data to support the AI/ML techniques? And if so, we should move forward. And while our name is C3 AI, we find that in most of our applications, use cases, work with our customers, we're often combining everything. We're combining simulation, AI, optimization, traditional time series forecasting, everything together. And these at the end of the day, there's no religion here. It's all about just applying more advanced analytic technique in applications to unlock business value.
I smiled when you started talking about not using AI ML to solve problems that it's not intended to solve or it's not best suited to solve. It reminded me of a conversation I just had with my husband about not trying to solve problems I don't have. So I don't know if you have conversations like that with your significant other, but every now and then my husband is trying to solve problems I don't have. So your explanation there reminded me of that. Don't try to use it to solve
Well,
problems.
yes, you have a hammer out there. It doesn't mean everything's a nail. And I mean, there are categories also of problems that it's inherently also potentially dangerous or problematic to use AI/ML techniques. Ones, for example, where there are significant biases in data sets
Yeah,
or hidden biases in data sets or
yeah,
potentially significant fairness issues. For example, we would never advocate and never use AI/ML in anything related to any HR system whatsoever, just because HR systems and human systems around hiring, retention, promotion of employees are heavily skewed, heavily biased, and algorithms are very good at picking up those kind of biases. And you definitely want to be very careful in use cases such as those, because you'll get an optimal result, but it may not be what you're looking for from a societal or a business standpoint.
So are there any other, beyond HR, are there any other measures that executives should take when it comes to addressing concerns about bias and fairness and ethics in the use of AI?
Yeah, it's a good question. I see some companies setting up kind of AI kind of fairness councils or AI councils,
Yeah.
advisory councils. Um, I don't think that's the right approach. My personal view is that each use case, each application needs to be evaluated on its own merit, and the responsibility cannot be offloaded to a separate entity or an organization. I think it has to squarely lie with the executive group that's sponsoring that effort. And it behooves them to really think through what are the fairness issues, what are the bias issues, what are the potential negative consequences of applying AI/ML for their use case, and working through that honestly and openly. And it's not really a technical issue. These things can be studied and analyzed actually often fairly easily. It's more of having the business sense to do that and making sure that you're doing that and thinking through that as you're applying machine learning in your enterprise.
Well, and I think the other thing, at least in my experience, has been approaching this and these conversations with a view toward this is not a one and done experience. This is a continually ongoing conversation, assessment, look at where we are, where we've been, what's our experience been. What do you think? We started on this journey and we thought this, and let's rethink this, let's rehash it. And that doesn't mean your decisions will necessarily change, but I just think that successful transformation to me is all about implementing, watching, learning, looking at the data, tweaking, reevaluating, and it's a never-ending process, which for some people sounds exhausting, but I think that's really our business world. you
Yes.
know
No, absolutely. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint,
yeah.
and but the other nice thing about AI/ML systems is they're designed to be learning systems, and so they work very well in the paradigm that you describe, right? Because as we make decisions, we can learn from them and improve outcomes, and we see this constantly in the field where we will deploy a system at a customer. And sure, the results are okay and are pretty good in the beginning, but we just see a situation where if we set up the right virtuous cycle, the right kind of learning system, they steadily improve over time, and you get often tremendous outperformance using these kind of systems. Just because there's the humans are learning how to use the algorithms, and the algorithms are adapting based on feedback,
Right.
and you set up a pretty nice virtuous cycle there.
Awesome. So for those people watching and listening who are thinking about thinking about integrating AI and ML, because we've done such a great we've sold them on the many opportunities here, Nikhil. So what kind of a team is it that they're going to need to be able to achieve what they want to achieve when it comes to integrating AI and ML into the enterprise?
Great question. It's a cross-functional team, first of all. I think so. You have a team, you need executive support, and it's not just data science. It's not just AI ML practitioners. It's data scientists, it's programmers, it's data integration specialists. Um, it's product managers and it's project managers, and it's the rank and file folks who are going to use the system on a day-to-day basis. Because AI ML, while it's interesting and it's fun and it's exciting for organizations to focus on the algorithm and the trained models. Um, in our experience, the trained model doesn't get you anything except you have a model artifact. The trained model, has to be embedded in software, has to be embedded in enterprise software, and has to be embedded in a business process and a continuously learning system and a change management system. Only then do you actually unlock economic value. So it's really this cross-functional team of data engineering, data science, application development, and project management and business sponsorship during prototyping. And during production operations, it's a collaboration between technology and business, and a learning collaboration where there's constant feedback, constant adaptation. I mean, if you're not training your model often once every week or retraining it once every month, you're doing something wrong, or even continuously training it. Um, so I think that's the kind of situation that we see where these systems need to be embedded in workflow-enabled applications and then be adopted by the business community to unlock economic value. And that's the reason why, as a company, we focus on applications, and we think about, we provide software that helps our customers build applications, and we also have pre-built applications that include models. I mean, models are a big part of it, but they're full end-to-end business applications that we advocate for as a software company. And then we fully acknowledge that the hardest problem in all of this is actually the business problem and the change management problem.
Right. Absolutely. Well, so I really like that explanation, because what you've talked about is not, just necessarily anybody new that you have to hire. Enterprises already have the vast majority of these people on staff. It's just a matter of thinking about how we put these teams together and how they work. So that's a good thing, right?
It's a really good thing. I mean, the two skills that I often do not see as much in the enterprise are the data science skills, because they're relatively new,
Yeah.
and the AI/ML practitioners, there are not that many of them out there. And then the second are the software side. So application developers um, are often also scarce. I mean, enterprises often think about BI and they think about dashboards and they think about maybe Java applications, but they don't really think about next generation business apps, or they haven't in the past. But that's changing rapidly. I think even in the last few years, we've seen a lot more of our customers invest to get AI/ML talent onboarded, and to build application development talent. And some of them are even building other types of computer science talent. But I think there's a strong recognition that these skills are required for the organization of the future.
Absolutely. I agree with you there. So I want to shift a little bit, and I want to talk about your journey with C3 AI. I know you've been with the company for about 8 years, and the company has evolved from where it started to where it is today. And I would love to hear, about that shift and what you've learned on that journey and how that helps you do what you do so well.
Um, well, I think it's actually been more than 8 years at last count, but who's counting at this point? Um, look, I think it's been a tremendous experience for us. When we started, we didn't even know that this journey was going to take us to machine learning. It was going to take us to AI. But I think we approached it in a very practical way. We wanted to solve problems for our customers and help them unlock economic value, using large amounts of data that were never processed before, and using the next generation in compute systems that were available to us with the advent of cloud computing. Um, And what we realized very early on is in order to solve problems, for example, let's say fraud detection in Southern Europe, um, we had to actually analyze these data because the data were too big to analyze using rules, too messy, too noisy. In order to make sense of the data, we had to use machine learning. And that's what led us down the AI ML journey. And we started that journey in energy. And then once we did it, we realized that these techniques are actually much more broadly applicable. And even the applications themselves are much more broadly applicable. So very quickly in our journey, we expanded to all other industries. And now we see consistent patterns of problems and opportunities across industries. We have cross-industry applications, industry-specific applications on top of that. And then we've really hardened our development product. So that's been our journey as a company, approaching it first from the point of view of what does it take to unlock economic value, and then doing that in the energy industry, and then realizing that there are significant parallels to be drawn, and these problems just repeat across. You see patterns of problems that it's the same. Fraud is the same in banking. It's the same in energy. Predictive maintenance is the same regardless of the industry you operate in, and that's the beauty of AI ML techniques as well. So there's there at the end of the day not that many algorithms that that can be trained in different contexts to solve very different types of problems. And there's a great book by Pedro Domingos called out of MIT, and I think he's faculty at MIT, and he has this book called The Master Algorithm that I think describes this exceptionally well.
Well, that'll have to be next on my reading list after I read your book. So with that, Nikhil Krishnan, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your gray matter. It's always a pleasure. And I will remind our audience, Nikhil's book, Enterprise Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning for Managers, is an exceptional one. And I will include a link to where you can find that book in the show notes for this episode. But Nikhil, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a fantastic conversation.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having C3 AI. And thank you for the wonderful and excellent questions.
Absolutely. Well, until then, this is a wrap.